Hello, and welcome to the third episode of Shelf Life, where I'm going to be talking to you guys a little bit about some of the, weird, interesting, obscure, funny, dark, macabre books that I've sort of collected over the years that I'm kind of pulling off my shelf. In our first two episodes, we covered sort of freaky short story, anecdote, folktale anthologies. And in the second one, we got a little naughty when we checked out The Happy Hooker in Xavier Hollander. And so for this one, we're going to move into murder. So what we've got here is a copy of Victorian Murderesses by Mary S. Hartman. This was published in 1976. Another find from the fantastic Black Squirrel Bookshop down on Bank. And so here we've got a true history of 13 respectable French and English women accused of unspeakable crimes. So this is sort of like a little cross-section of society. And this is more of an academic read than, like a story read. So it takes a lot from newspaper accounts, court proceedings and documents, police investigations, what little investigating there was, because let's face it, essentially, most of these women were accused of murdering, husbands, lovers, things like that. A lot of research into these cases also is pulled from like academic articles and journals and things like that. It's very feminist. It's very feminist based, and you can sort of also see how in Victorian times law and things like that was not on a woman's side. You weren't even considered a person. You couldn't vote. You had no rights. You sat in the kitchen, you pumped out babies, you were seen and not heard. And a lot of the outcomes from these murders, most of them by poisoning, by the way, not uncommon, were, the result of mental, emotional, psychological, physical abuse in unhappy relationships. Things like that, so it's sort of a last resort kind of desperate act, because you couldn't get divorced, you couldn't leave your husband, you had no rights, you'd lose all your money, you'd lose everything. So these are sort of last desperate attempts by these women to free themselves in a lot of cases from horrible marriages, difficult situations, things like that. So what we've got in here are a lot of sort of pullings from academic readings. Like I said, this is definitely more of not a storytelling read, but it goes into a lot of detail though. So how the poison killed people, how it was administered. There's a lot of scandal involved in a lot of them as well too. So we've got a couple of the cases here listing arsenic and matrimony, cases of Marie Lafarge and Euphemie Lacoste, the waiting games of brides-to-be, the singular outcasts, the new women, the cases of Florence Bravo and Henriette Francis. So in that one, we're going more into how women were pushing for more rights, more freedoms and things like that, and they were castigated for it, and ended up eventually lashing out. Then we've got poison revolvers and the double standard, which, if you're not familiar with feminist literature, usually refers to the fact that men have sort of the okay to do a lot of things, either socially, sexually, behaviorally, things like that women do not. So where, a lot of these women just had completely had enough of that and went to extremes. But another thing in here too is you really get to see like what an absolute travesty of justice the legal system was. A lot of circumstantial evidence, a lot of character assassination of these women. And most of it was based on character assassination. You know, and that's what swayed the decisions of the juries. Some of them weren't even juries. Some of them were like, you know, just a judge passing out sentences. So, you know, some women ended up in jail, some women ended up executed, you know, absolutely nuts. So in the middle of the book here, we've got like a series of illustrations as well too. So there's Marie Lafarge. And then throughout the sort of like little middle section here, Madeline Smith and Constance Kent. So it's nice that you actually get to sort of put like, you know, a face to the name. It makes it like a little more real, like some of these like women's like situations. You know, and this one we've got Gabrielle Feneru and Florence Bravo. And Adelaide and Florence Mayo. So yeah, I mean, like, you know, it seems absolutely ridiculous, but this is like a really non-romantic, realist, gritty, you know, sometimes brutal, because a lot of the courts go into like really nasty detail about like causes of death and like, you know, things like that, how it was accomplished and whatnot. And if you're really sort of interested about more of this reading and things like that, at the back, there are a lot of like footnotes. There's the bibliography, manuscript sources, you know, newspapers and studies related to crimes. I mean, like Hartman went into like a lot of research with this book. And so I essentially picked this up at the Black Squirrel because I was like, oh, like murder, Victorian. Yes, you know, I thought that was great. I had no idea what I was like really getting into until I read it. But it's just such a fantastic snapshot of like a period in time where like things were so different and so difficult, and just like the extreme that someone will go to if they're pushed that hard, if they see that there's like no other way out. There's no other possible way that like, you know, things could end. They have no options, no help, no resources, no nothing, you know, and some of them almost got away with it, but clearly did not. And most of them, you know, it was very unfortunate endings for them, and all they wanted was to be happy and to be free. So not a light read. You're not, you know, you're not going to walk away from this and just be like, oh, feel good, you know, yeah. It's not arsenic in a little place, but yeah, quite interesting. If you're, you know, a student of, you know, interested in gender studies, feminism, things like that, or even just from like a historical perspective as well too. I'm a sucker for like Victoriana everything pretty well. This was a really neat read. It could be a resource in like, you know, if you're doing university courses or anything like that in like law or gender studies or psychology, even from a psychological viewpoint, this was a fantastic book because it really sort of took you into the minds of these women, and you know, just the desperation that was there. It was just like, wow. So this was a little short one, but once again, Victorian Murderesses by Mary Hartman. And this was, like I said, published in 1976. So it was sort of like pertinent as well too, because I mean, you know, I hate to say women's liberation, but again, like the sexual revolution was like still happening. You know, feminism was like really sort of exploding, like second wave feminism. So very pertinent like at the time. And the sad thing is that you can still draw so many parallels between the situations of some of these women here and just sort of see like how things have not changed. And that is the really scary part, honestly. So tune in next time. I don't know what we're going to have yet because I haven't picked them. So see you again soon for another episode of Shelf Life. I'm going to try to do these like on a weekly basis. We shall see. And again, you know, comment if you want to hear about anything in particular, like vampires or ghosts or death or, you know, something funny for a change. I've got some really good funny ones, so I'm going to pull out at some point. So yeah, you know, comments, questions, anything like that. Questions, I love questions. Yeah, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.